Hello, Patreon friends. Thanks so much for subscribing. Still figuring out how we're going to do all of this stuff, but I have made the decision that, it's the beginning of the month. Right now it's June 2nd, and I have things set up in my life to take place at the front of every month. One of those things is I post about the books that I read, and when I say I post about the books I've read, I mean I just post the books I've read. So I decided to come here and talk a little bit about the 4 books I was able to read in May, and then maybe do this every month because I think it's fun and cool. Maybe, I'm not sure. But there's other news that I'd like to tell you about, but I feel like that should just be a different video. This is just going to be at the book. Cut. No, I'm going to do this in one take. This is going to be about the books of May. So, because I don't physically have the books anymore, like out of the 4 books I read in May, one was an audiobook, so I read it, and the other 3 I got from the library. I love going to the library. It's the best. And the Chicago Public Library is exceptional. And they have everything, and you just put something on hold, and when it's ready, it shows up at the nearest public library. That's the best. Also, what I'll say is, why am I reading the books I'm reading? I do this thing where I have a list. Surprise. The Chicago Public Library's website is also really great about this. You can have like a for later list. So whenever I receive a recommendation, either in person or I just see something online and I'm like, oh, that sounds cool, I want to read that, I'll throw it in my for later list and I forget about it. Which means when it comes time to get it from the library, I've completely forgotten why it's on the list. I just at one point thought I would like it. So it has happened on numerous occasions where I'm like, okay, I don't know why this is on the list, but I'll get it. And I start the book and I'm like, this is terrible. And I don't finish it. So that's another thing. If I read, between 20 and 50 pages, and if I'm like, no, this isn't good. And if it's an audiobook, I'll listen to like the first hour maybe. And if I'm just like, I'm not feeling it, I'll stop. So every book that I finish is technically one that I enjoyed enough to finish. So let's talk about the 4 I completed in May. Oh, here's a cat. Come here. Oh, she got away. That's Jupiter. Maybe she'll come back. The first one was The Dream Hotel by... I'm so prepared. I know the author. It's Leilani or something like that. So Leila Lalami. Again, don't know why this was on my list, but I suspect it has something to do with my love of dystopian fiction. And I'm getting a little concerned about some of the dystopian fiction that I'm learning because it's not really fiction anymore. So The Dream Hotel, I enjoyed quite a bit. It's about, revolves around a detention center, specifically this one for women that are suspected of, like an algorithm predicts that they're likely to commit a crime. So that's all I'm going to say really about that. But it's funny, on the front it says read with Jenna, and I'm like, I didn't know what that was, and then my partner was like, oh, that's Jenna Bush. I'm like, oh, great, Jenna Bush and I just reading the same book. But I did like that. But like I said, it's getting a little too close to home with the dystopian fiction. The second book I read was called Behind You is the Sea. And next time I do this, I'm going to make sure that I have the author's name pulled up. Susan Muadi Daraj. Oops, where am I here? And so, yeah, Behind You in the Sea is the one that I read. I did an audiobook on. And I really like doing audiobooks in conjunction with reading actual books because, you can't read an actual book when you're driving or when you're walking, really. That's unsafe. So, I don't know. I always like to be doing a thing if I'm doing a thing that requires whatever. Like if I need to get someplace, and a place I've been many times, whatever, I'm going to listen to an audiobook or I'm going to listen to new records. But anyway, Behind You is the Sea is a very cool, it's one of these, it's not dystopian fiction, it's not science fiction, and it's a Palestinian author, and it's about, mostly takes place in Baltimore, about Palestinian immigrants in Baltimore and a specific community of them. But it's written in the form of, that is hit or miss for me, where each chapter is kind of its own story, but it still fits within the sort of construct of the community, right? So like characters intersect or whatever, but you don't realize, like when you're reading the first chapter, that this random character in the first chapter is going to have their own chapter like later in the book. But I really did enjoy it. And if a book makes me weepy a little bit, then it shoots up the charts. I also rate these on like Storygraph and Goodreads, so you could check that out as well. So we'll see if that becomes one of my favorite books of the year. But I really did enjoy it, and it made me a little weepy at the end. The third book I finished in May was Dengue Boy. Holy cow! Dengue Boy is by, let's see who wrote Dengue Boy. Michael, I think, or Michelle, but I think it's a man, Nieva, and it's been translated, the text, and I think I suspect that this made it on my list because it was on some sort of Instagram influencers list of books that they were, after they read it, they went, what the hell did I just read? And sometimes I'm like, oh, that sounds kind of fun. And I think that's what this was, because I read it in one sitting, basically. And that sitting was when I was on a plane from here in Chicago to Helsinki, because it's kind of a short book, but it's a bit of a quick read, but it is bizarre. It takes, again, it's a little dystopian fiction. It's very sci-fi. It takes place in the future, and Dengue Boy, the titular character, is like a half mosquito. So I'll just leave it there. But what I liked about it was that it was different, and it was cool and interesting. It's gross. It's pretty gross, and so if you're into that, you'll love it. But it also takes place after a major climate event. So it takes place near Antarctica, and they have a map or whatever, so you can pinpoint where you are during the story, which is, I appreciate, because I like a map. And lastly, the last book I read in May, it's called Beautiful Ugly, and that author, I remember, it's Alice Feeney, and I don't know how I sort of got on this track of reading sort of mystery thriller novels by British authors, mostly women, but I quite enjoy them. They're, especially after Dengue Boy, sometimes you need a little palate cleanser that is sort of easier to get through, and not science fiction. It's I don't know. Usually I try and read at least one nonfiction as well, which I'm getting through right now, which maybe I'll finish in June and we can talk about in a month. But yeah, Beautiful Ugly was, as her other books that I've read, centered around a couple, like a husband and a wife, basically. Oh, that's an interesting bird. I think it's a female cardinal. Anyway, and there's like a lot of secrets and things. This book also has a thing happen where some of it takes place in a remote location, which, again, that happens in a lot of sci-fi books, but a lot of books recently in general that I like, but like it's starting to get to be a little like an old and tropey. But I didn't like this book as much as I liked her other book, which was called Rock, Paper, Scissors, which I quite enjoyed. Again, that one takes place in a remote location, and it's between, and there's some I'm not going to get into it too much other than to say that there's a lot of people keeping secrets. Let's just say that. Anyway, I'm at 10 minutes. That's where I want to keep these videos at, so you can watch them or listen to them quickly and then get on with your day, reading or working or whatever you need to do. But yeah, thanks for listening, and stay tuned. There's going to be more of these to come.